Why do you keep hiring the wrong people? Today we're going to do an autopsy of your hiring decisions. Why you keep hiring people, they keep leaving you, or they just don't work, or they steal from you, or you just are having a very bad time with the employees that you're hiring. So let's start from the beginning. Before you make the decision to hire, where do you start? Do you actually need the person you're going to hire? Do you know what role they're going to come and do in your business? What problem they're coming to fix? Or what value add they're bringing in? Have you done an audit of your business or just done an what we call a job evaluation to understand the roles that are required in your business before you bring in this person? Is your business ready to hire the quality or the caliber of the candidate you want to hire? Now, before even we go there, if you haven't done all this, stop all your hiring decisions until you have figured out why you want to hire this particular person, even if it is just a replacement you're carrying out in your business. Because if you don't take a step back when an employee leaves or you let them go and figure out, is this position important to the organization? To what extent do we need this person in the business? And how far can we push results from this particular position? If you haven't figured out those questions, then you have no business hiring the next candidate. Now, if you already have figured that out, then the next step is figuring out the kind of person that you need in terms of your recruitment matrix, the kind of person you need in terms of the qualifications, in terms of the work ethic, in terms of the culture fit, and in terms of budget, because most of us want to hire the best and pay monkeys. Now, figure out that this role is important because it's going to fulfill a particular KPI, either a departmental KPI or a strategic KPI. They're going to bring in revenue, or they're going to bring down a particular cost, or they're going to ease a certain particular process that actually will increase revenue or reduce cost for the business. If you figure that out, then you know that this person will work for possibly 2 years, 3 years, 4 years in your business. You have no business hiring someone who will stay with you 10 years. Why? Because they're not likely to grow as quickly as that role will require. Now, if you've figured out what you require in terms of the person qualifications, then now you go out and set out to find the candidate of your dreams. Where do you find them? If you have what we call an applicant tracking system, you're likely to make a mistake. Or if you're using a provider who has an ATS, you're likely to make a mistake. And why do I say this? There's been a Harvard study that has been released in the last 3 weeks that says the ATSs that are being used are usually coming from the same vendors. What does this mean? If a particular company had the same role but had different qualifications, and a candidate had applied for the same role and they apply for your job with the same qualifications, the ATS is likely to remove them from the system, and you are not likely to find the right candidates. That's why you find if you're using these job providers that give you an ATS system for you to use, you're not likely to get the candidate you're looking for. Another thing, a hard worker is likely not looking for a job. The best candidates are usually working for the employers, they're focusing on their job, and the employers are doing their best to retain that particular person. So if you're heavily relying on applications for someone to come to your business, then you're not going to likely get the best. You might get a good person, but you might not get the best. Why? Because the hardworking person or the person who's a great culture fit is likely having a good time where they're working. So if you're not thinking about headhunting a particular role, then you are likely not to get the best. But even as you're thinking about headhunting, have you thought about budget? Budget is a key factor in hiring the right person. I know we're looking to get the best at the least possible price. However, you need to think about the longevity of this particular candidate when they come in. Sometimes you might find a candidate who's good, who's out of a job because of either politics or the business closed or for whatever reason that this person is coming in. If you pay them way lower than where they feel they need to be at, they will take the job and start looking for another one while they're at your place of work. So you really need to think about how best can I afford this role? And how can I split it if I don't have the budget to have someone at a lower caliber, but then perhaps use technology to fulfill the requirements of that role? Or to manage my expectations as an employer to see how best do I structure this so that I'm getting as best as I can from this role without requiring the highest caliber of candidates. Now, you have figured out that you need to either use a combination of ATS hiring, headhunting, and you have some candidates you want to talk to. Then, if you haven't found any, perhaps you need to get a professional to talk to. Like, for example, we do recruitment. There are many other companies that do recruitment that can ease the burden of recruitment from your business, because we now do a combination of all these methods: network recruitment, headhunting, application systems, and all the others that we use. But if you're able to do it yourself, please go ahead. Now, you have a pool of candidates. How do you select the right one? Remember, candidates are prepared to do well at interviews. The questions you're asking them, they're going online, they're going to AI, they're asking what kind of questions will the employer ask at the interview level. They're probably going to do a lot of research about your company. They're going to do a lot of research about the role. They even probably already know how much you're paying for that role, because your former employees are also reporting that on the internet. Now, if they've done that much research and you have just come in with your standard interview questions, who is likely to lose in this situation? Likely you, right? Now, you need to be better prepared than they are to make sure that you get the right candidate. So what we advise our clients is to, one, have tests that they do while seated there. If you send the test and they're at home, they will use AI. If you can do practical tests while they're at your premises, you're likely to weed out candidates who are not as good at the role as you're able to find. Number two, always, and I mean always, do background checks. If you're not calling their previous employers to find out their work ethic, why they left, how they worked with others, their teamwork, their capabilities, what you need to be prepared for in terms of their weaknesses, you are preparing to fail. The only person who can tell you how an individual is the person who has worked for them before. Why? Because remember, their references are put there for a reason, because they're going to say good things. When they're coming to talk to you, they're going to say good things about themselves. The only person who can tell you the truth, a previous employer. And if possible, if they've worked for 2 or 3, call as many, or call everybody who has they've worked for, so that at least you're getting a balanced view. Sometimes they had a problem with a particular employer, so you don't also want to take that bias and bring it to the interview process. Also, candidates who tend to tell you the truth that might not be so pleasant. For example, someone who tells you, I had this case at my previous workplace, this is how I got fired, should not be an automatic no for you, because they're likely to tell you the truth even while they're at your business. Don't expect someone to tell you wonderful things about their previous employers, even when you know they're lying. That's because they're talking badly about somebody. Does not necessarily mean that they're bad for you or that they will talk badly about you. If you remove the personal references and fear around the process, you're likely to get a more balanced view about a particular candidate. Now, once you have made a decision about this is the best candidate, then you need to think about cultural fit. What are their experiences? What are their family circumstances? Where do they live? What number of children do they have? I mean, and I'm not saying you use that as a discrimination factor, but you need to be prepared. For example, if you hire a young man or a young lady who's perhaps in the mid to late 20s, they are likely to want to settle down in the future. So they'll be thinking a lot about money. They'll be thinking about stability. They'll be thinking about the environment in terms of, am I able to grow in this environment? Can I safely get married and cater for a family while I'm in this environment? Is the job stable enough for me to ensure that I have put food on the table for other individuals in the future? For someone who's a bit older, maybe a bit 35 to 40, they're looking for somewhere where they're going to be stable. So they're not really concerned too much about money. They're really concerned about the time you pay, because probably now they have school fees to pay, they have rent to pay, they have other obligations with family. Someone a bit older is looking at somewhere where they're probably going to retire. So they're thinking about what next for their career. So if you're never thinking about the circumstances of a particular candidate when they're coming on board, then you're not prepared to actually hire this person. Leave alone making sure they have a desk and a laptop and and a welcome email saying welcome to the company. Really be ready for this person coming in. If they said anything about, say, career progression during the interview process, that's something you really need to put in mind, even as you're welcoming this particular individual. So think about all these things when you're bringing someone on board so that you're aligned. Not only are they aligned to you, but you're also aligned to their career growth. If you're not thinking about this person's career growth, you're preparing for them to leave. And especially if it's a role that requires a bit of stability, that needs, especially things like finance, audit, that you don't want too much attrition in a particular role, you want to ensure that that position has someone who's stable and is happy in that role. Then you can do all the other HR things to ensure that they stay. All right. I hope you've learned something today. And I hope you will make better decisions in the future, and subscribe to our channel to learn a little bit more about how to make sure your business thrives. Good day.